Why did humanity ignore us? We, the Great Pan Galactic Alliance, had been the guardians of this galaxy for as long as Starflight was possible. We had broken through the light barrier, then the space-time barrier, and even the boundaries between the living and dead. We, who stood at the top of all of reality, were undeniably the most awesome force this universe had possibly created. By the gods of creation, we were even the ones who reached out to the great devourers of the void to befriend them. So why is it that they ignored us? We had done everything as the progenitors had decreed. Initiate first contact after they reach quantum computing, offer them the lowest tier of FTL comms and travel, then send a few missionaries to preach the word of the ethereal gods. We contacted them, they accepted the FTL technology, then they let the missionaries come to Earth. It had seemed as though all was going to plan, until our missionaries came back saying there could be no converts. Not an issue, really. We had plenty of races that still believed in their own deities or chose a life of non-belief. What was concerning was that they gave us back the FTL technology, saying that they didn't want it. Never in my 43,000 years had I ever heard of such an outrageous event unfolding. Practically all species took our technology with joyous enthusiasm. Not the humans, it seemed. They spent about 4 months looking it over. Or as our in-depth scans would tell, they had it sitting on a shelf for that entire time. They didn't even use it or anything, they just dropped it in a box and said that it was useless. I was dumbfounded, utterly shaken by such willful ignorance. Oh, but you probably know what came next, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about them. They cut off all of their deep space communications. That's right, all of their expensive satellites, massive lunar transmitters, and roaming probes all went silent as soon as they dropped off the unused FTL device. When we sent a diplomatic shuttle to ask them why, they were told that Earth was not receiving guests. We pushed a little harder by sending a fully armed corvette to land on their moon, only to have the lunar colony seal their doors until we left. Our final attempt to coax them into a response was to send a warship to warp into the upper atmosphere. They evacuated the city it hovered by, and refused to accept our hails. Irritating is a word I would use to describe the scenario. I digress, as such matters are beneath me. I am an Orosian, after all. We have been at the seat of the Alliance since its conception. It is no wonder that every other race loves us so. We painstakingly pulled each and every one of them out of the mud they were born in, gave them the technology they now depend on, and led them into this great golden age we're in now. Things would be perfect if it weren't for those pesky humans. You know what? I think I will go there personally. I'll figure it out, even if I have to dress up like one of those oddly shaped tree dwellers. Oh, this will be thrilling. I think I understand now. I arrived on Earth 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure how time has passed so quickly, perhaps due to the constant state of shock I've been in. Gods, where do I begin? My ship was able to arrive on the planet unnoticed, or at least I hope so, but I hadn't been ousted yet, so perhaps I'd actually snuck in unnoticed. From the landing point, it was only a few hours of a walk to get to the city, a place they dubbed New Delaware. I do not know what happened to the first one, but this new one was unlike any I had seen before. The sky itself was darkened by towering buildings that were larger than any I had ever seen, even in the gold-trimmed capital city of Orion Prime. Darting around in between these buildings were these transports, each configured in a unique way that seemed to change and shift as they moved, with some relying on wheels to roll along the busy roads, while others would fly or crawl along the walls high above. The people were all so different. I had thought humans were the only race to reach sentience on Earth, but I must have been mistaken. Creatures of every size and shape wandered the streets, perused the shops, or tried to converse with me in strange languages. It took a few days, but eventually I came across a vendor that sold translator graphs, a small device that seemed to fuse to the skin on one's head and provide instant language comprehension. From here, my investigation became much easier. I asked many people about the Pan Galactic Alliance, but the most I could get from them was a dismissive wave or a shrug of confusion. This was odd. Had the common people not been told about our glorious alliance? Such an idea was distressing, but my search for answers continued on. I believe it was on the 11th day of my search that I came across some indications as to why they ignored us. While perusing their internet, I happened to find a few articles that made mention of a North American gate, which prompted me to dig deeper. From my gathering, each continent of the world had a gate that allowed some kind of transportation. I downloaded the directions to this device and made my way there on a communal transit device. My initial guess was that the humans had made contact with another interplanetary entity and were engaging in trade with them by undocumented means. The evidence led me to believe this, as none of these races I had encountered on Earth, aside from the humans, had ever been encountered before. Their technology also baffled me. It was too advanced for a fledgling species, perhaps more advanced than the Alliance's. Arrival at the gate told me that my assumption may have been off. Before me was an array of rings, each a human mile wide, hovering in the air around a tower. Each gate read something different. Earth Gamma 54, Earth Terranine 3, Earth this or Earth that. There were hundreds of them, slowly orbiting this tower of impossible height. Hovering vehicles passed through these rings at breakneck speeds, as well as more creatures that I had never seen that could fly without mechanical devices. My mind could not comprehend what I saw. My gawking at the gate must have drawn some attention. A handful of peacekeepers approached me while my attention was occupied, and before I could react, I was caught in some kind of stasis field. Unable to move, I could only watch and listen as they took me into a black vehicle with no windows. Fear overtook me, and I must have blacked out. When I awoke, I realized that my place of being was that of a confined cell. Not a prisoner's cell, but more like a comfortable waiting room without any devices or data sheets. It was not long until a creature in an all-black suit entered the room and began asking me questions. I had no knowledge of this, but apparently the humans had issued a do not disturb request with the Alliance leaders, though it seemed that they had ignored it despite the Earth people. I had technically violated laws that were similar to violating quarantine, or perhaps more akin to illegal immigration. But since I was not aware of such laws, I was to be shown leniency. My ship had been detected, but my disguise and frequent visiting to high population areas had made it difficult for them to track me. So it was by pure luck that I had even gotten close to their precious gates. I was allowed to ask about the gates. It turns out that humanity had been reaching out to the stars in search of friendship for a great many years, but they were ignored due to their lack of technological advancement. They never gave up, but something did interrupt their search for alien life. The tar. A mile-long tear opened up over a place called Africa, through which came broadcasts from an unknown military force. They entered communications with this military force as they studied the rift, only to learn that the rift was the receiving door for an otherworldly visitor. They had been approached by aliens from another reality. No, not aliens, but other humans. Humans from an alternate world. A different Earth came through the doorway and into their world. They told a story that made little sense of how they had been approached by humans from an alternate reality, who had also been given this power by a different Earth. It was a chain of unimaginable length, with each Earth working with the last to build the next link so they could do it again. Each world that had been linked would work together with a reality or two over to make a gate that matched, thus turning the chain into a web of infinite connections between realities. My head spun when I tried to process it. All of those aliens I had met were not from another galaxy or even another planet. They were all Earth-born. Whether they were human or not, they were all from the same home. I couldn't ignore the implications of this. The entire Alliance could cover the galaxy, but the Earth alone was infinitely more powerful. Their population, resources, technology, even their diversity was all of unending scale. I resigned myself to my fate. Everything I had thought right had been made wrong. Every fantasy of being a higher being withered and faded. I had been humbled and broken. I told the being across from me that I was sorry, then bowed my head in shame. Again, my assumptions were knocked flat. I was told that I was being sent home, and that my ship had been returned to me. They gave me a warm meal and a gift, a better room to sleep for the night, and a full fuel canister for my jump drive. They told me I was free to report on what I had seen, though no further incursions would be tolerated. I left as soon as my drive finished spooling up. Here I sit in the captain's chair of my ship, my conceptions of common knowledge irreparably destroyed. My people had broken every barrier in our reality, but the humans had broken the barrier. of reality. They had access to an infinite well of information and innovation. They wanted for nothing, and had a scarcity of none. When I wonder, why did they ignore us? I can now know the answer in my heart. They ignored us because they had so much better things to worry about than aliens.